We're here with San Jose State women's basketball head coach April Phillips. Coach AP, you're entering year 3 here in San Jose.
Yeah.
You know, I'll start out with the same thing that I asked the ladies, and just what's the level of optimism coming in here? I know San Jose's kind of been on the bottom of the barrel in this conference here the past 2 seasons. You guys obviously playing with the chip on your shoulder, but just overall, what's the level of excitement coming into this season that maybe not in the past 2 seasons that you might have had?
I like the idea of process. And I think our industry and probably just the world of sports in general wants to. It's your third year, coach, and A, B, and C, and D should happen. This team that I have right now deserves their own process, and so that's our focus. Is this team, it's obviously a group of new girls. We've never had this team here at San Jose State before. We're never going to have this team at San Jose State ever again. And so they deserve their own due process. And that's kind of what we've been working on, just seeing them develop, seeing them mesh. We've got a lot of talent in the room. 1, 2 can't do it on their own, right? And so just getting that to mesh. They really enjoy one another, which is a huge positive and really helpful. And so getting that friendship and that and that care to transfer over to the court, I think is very different because there's still a little bit of that hesitancy of like, hey, no, you need to set me that screen, right? Or no, you didn't do A, B, and C. And so getting comfortable, I think, with some of those tough accountability conversations on the court, just as comfortable as they are off the court is kind of where we're at right now. And everything is we're growing, we're molding, and they deserve their own process.
Obviously you guys lose 3 of your top scorers. Jaya Lovett was, the freshman last year that kind of just showcased what she was all about. And Sabrina Ma, the sharpshooter, Moreland, who transferred within the Mountain West. I'm just curious, how difficult is it in this college basketball landscape now just to navigate this portal? Because there's just a bunch of unknowns. It seems like you're just going to have a new team every year. Is that kind of, you just got to accept the reality at this point?
Yeah, I think so. And I'll be honest with you, in the transfer portal age, there are some schools that had 7, 8, 9 transfers. I mean, we had 3 transfers. And all 3 of those young women played. Obviously, we had a lot of injury issues with numbers, and I mean, we were down to 7 at some points, last season. But yeah, I think that essentially is what it is, right? Like, you're going to have a very different looking team each year. I think even simply having 3 transfers is actually a pretty decent number comparatively to the country and the numbers that are happening. But I do think it's where we are. It's kind of like that saying, good or bad, hard to say, who knows, right? It's not really my place to say if it's a good or bad thing for the landscape, but just adjusting to what it is, right? There are going to be new pieces every year, and so early in the season, you are going to be trying to strive to find that chemistry year after year. And that's just kind of where we're at. And I think sometimes mid-major student athletes come in and do really well. They want to go higher. And then just in general, sometimes folks just, it's not a fit. And so it's a little bit easier nowadays to say that doesn't work for me. I'm going to go over here. Whereas, I'm not that old, but a little bit more back in the day, like you kind of dug your feet in a little bit more and tried to have some of the tough conversations and such. But it's what it is. And I promise you, I look at every student athlete that we've had into that transfer portal, and I follow their career, and I pray, and I hope that they do well. Everything is just not a fit.
Right. And forget about all the players that left for a minute. One of the players that you do go get in the portal is Alabama A&M transfer Amiah Simmons. Clearly can score the basketball. She scored over 30 points, 35 points in one of the SWAC conference games last year. Has she been a bright spot so far here in practice? I know all your players are, and all your players, with more development, and as they get older, they get better. But what have you seen from her in particular? Obviously, a new face in San Jose this year.
Yeah, Amaya's is going to be a good contributor for our program. I think when you transfer from the SWAC and you're coming to the Mountain West, it is a different level of basketball that takes some adjusting, right? And so one thing that we do know is that she has the competitive desire to really get downhill, to really score the ball, those things. At this level, it's really learning how do you now make other people better. And so we've been kind of working through that a little bit of like, here in the Mountain West, you're not going to just get to the rim every time, right? And so how do you make sure that you're distributing, making your other teammates better, which is then now going to open you up some as well. But the kid is competitive as all get out. She can get to that rim. She's strikingly quick. And so it's that process of just getting everyone accustomed to playing with one another. But I think she's going to have some extremely bright spots, and I think our community is going to really enjoy watching her play.
You know, you talked about that transition from the SWAC to the Mountain West, but just like the Mountain West in general, how difficult is it, just to play on the road in those environments? I mean, all those crowds, the altitude. I know people don't want to talk about the altitude, but I feel like it's real. And, talk about those different dynamics and environments that you guys have to play in every year, and, how difficult that is, maybe on your players, trying to get that accustomed on the fly in game.
I try to ignore it. No, I'm just it is. It's different. I will say that. Having been in various conferences from the Big East, the ACC, the Pac-12, Big 12, it's different. Mm-hmm. It's very different. There's no other conference like it. I will say that. And I think it's going into year 3. It's kind of just the understanding and the knowing of what's ahead, and how we can best prepare our student athletes. Before we do go to those high levels of altitude, we're trying to make sure that they're really hydrating. But it's kind of like this delicate balance of like, we got to make sure that you really hydrate, but we also don't want to make too big of a deal of it, right? Like, right. So it's this delicate balance of those things. But at the end of the day, you gotta play.
Yep.
You gotta play, and that's just what it is, and that's what we try to keep it to more often than not.
One of the players that did play last year and really showed out down the stretches of last season was Sydney Summers. Mm-hmm. Great defensive player, able to score the basketball in that one first round Mountain West tournament game.
Yeah.
What are you excited to see from her? You retain her underclassmen. She gets to learn from some of the veterans that we just talked to earlier. What have you seen in her game, and and how have you seen her improve during the off season?
Yeah. That's the thing. Sydney, she had a growth segment over the course of last season that I thought was extremely impressive. It's amazing when you just lean into the process and almost surrender yourself to being coached and to just giving it everything you have, like what shift that makes. And it was really good to see her make that shift, and obviously culminating to her ended up on that all-freshman team. But she's still young, right? And she still needs that guidance and that redirection of, like, do you remember A, B, and C, right? And how we got to where we got to. And so a little bit of reminding of that process. But I think it's good that she now has it to reflect on. To take a look back and say, you're right, coach, like actually when I did A, B, and C, that worked. And so as you're an underclassman, you still aren't really in the space to do that for yourself completely. And so you've got to be reminded, and those lessons have to come back around a little bit more and more. But when Sydney locks in, Sydney's a darn good player. And she's had some issues of just staying healthy, so we're trying to keep her healthy and all those things. But I expect that she'll hit the stride right when she needs to.
All right, we'll wrap it up with this. You guys are picked 10th in the preseason polls. No one's really given the Spartans a chance this year. You kind of use that as motivation, kind of that underdog mentality. You kind of preach that to your players at all, or you kind of just shout out all the noise, or do you kind of use that as motivation for your players, kind of at this point of the season, hey, we're heading into it. Like, hey.
Yeah, it's us against everybody, and that's what it is. But it's not really it's not motivation. We won't talk about it much, to be honest. It really has nothing to do with that process, actually. what those numbers say literally has nothing to do with what we do on a day-to-day basis. We're going to work to be the best version of ourselves, whether that was 10 or 1. So it really actually isn't a part of our conversation and won't be. We know who we want to be for ourselves and not for those numbers.
There you have it. San Jose State women's basketball head coach April Phillips. Thanks for the time.
Appreciate it.